Opening.
I need to show you something. This is an 1894 Sanborn map of a couple of blocks in New York. Sanborn maps were like cheat sheets for fire insurance companies all across the US. These maps contain detailed information on most buildings, like height or construction materials. And insurance companies reference this every time they insure a building. But look at this. In 1894, 90 Prince Street was a 2-story lot. And around 10 years later, it becomes an 8-story building that still stands today. But if you look closer, you'll see this E that wasn't there before. And you start to see it in more and more buildings in just a few years. This is the code for elevators. At the time, high-rise buildings were being built faster than ever, a feat that wouldn't be possible without elevators. And there was one company selling most of these elevators, Otis. And the American company that gave birth to elevators rose to the top, and with it, skyscrapers did too. And so a vertical way of life was born. At the turn of the century, Otis' newly released Escalators cemented this way of life even further, changing how shoppers and travelers move around the city. And it's not only Otis anymore, it's Schindler, Kone, Hitachi, Mitsubishi, and TK. You may not recognize any of these names because when their machines are working, you wouldn't even notice them. But these companies are the major players of a $134 billion global industry and employ a workforce of the best paid blue-collar workers in the US. As I look closer, I realized that their economics were unlike anything I had ever seen before. So what really is their business model, and how did moving people up and down become so profitable?
The city was essentially a 3 to 5 story city. So in 1870 in New York, the Equitable Life Assurance Building near Wall Street was one of the first office buildings to actually incorporate an elevator into the building, which was able to rent the higher floors at a premium. And so it really kind of set the trend for renting higher and higher floors because they were now more valuable. The fact that higher floors rent or sell for more money than the lower floors became one of the key aspects of skyscraper economics.
And to get higher, you need to figure out a stronger engine.
The first power systems for elevators, they were steam powered. Problem with steam elevators is, well, they're steam powered, which means I have a steam engine running all the time in my basement because I need power available all the time. At about the time that people were recognizing, well, we need a new kind of elevator system, and they developed something called a roped hydraulic system.
It was stronger and faster. Suddenly, buildings could go up from 10 stories up to 30 stories high.
Everyone is sort of looking around going, you know, it might be interesting if we could even go taller, but this technology isn't going to do it. But at that same time, the electric motor has been perfected as a means of powering all kinds of things. That was the answer to building higher.
Elevators spread even further thanks to this new development, which also opened the door for another invention that could take even more people up and down. Escalators.
An elevator going up and down maybe could carry, I'm making up these numbers, they're sort of rough, might carry 400 people in an hour. An escalator, if it's 3 feet wide, could probably carry over 3,000 people in an hour. This is a big difference.
Escalators were initially made for mass transit in places like the New York Metro, where there were a lot of stairs and traffic to manage. But it got developers curious about what else they could do, especially in retail.
And then they looked around and said, we have another building type that is always filled with people on the first floor, and it's harder to get the people on the second or third floor. That building type is the large department store. And if I'm a department store owner, I've suddenly realized my second floor can become as valuable as my first floor. I'm going to make a lot more money.
Vertical transportation transformed the economics of all buildings, and in the process, it made developers, landlords, and store owners a lot of money. But that is only if they work. So how do you ensure that they keep running? For that, you need an expert.
I'm Matthew Montesano. I'm with DTM Elevator Consulting, based out in New York City, and I'm a professional elevator consultant.
What does an elevator consultant do?
So that's a great question because not a lot of people know what we do.
Basically, they help property managers and developers figure out how to install and maintain these big machines inside their buildings. And one person on the ground is crucial for all of this, a lift technician. It might not sound very trendy, but let me show you something. This is the highest paid blue-collar job in the US, with a median pay of over $105,000. If you want to look at a career that might not be super sexy, but it is insanely lucrative, this is the one. Now, if you're an entrepreneur or a marketer, you might not want to go through a 4-year apprenticeship to fix elevators, but you should definitely steal their approach. At The Hustle, we came up with the Unsexy Business Ideas database, where we put together over 30 business ideas in unsexy niches. It's a spreadsheet of business ideas that we've researched that people normally overlook and are making people quietly rich. For example, we documented how garage door servicing and shelving operations are netting over $15,000 a month with almost zero inventory overhead. Click the link in the description to download the file. Once you see the unit economics of all these boring local businesses, you'll see them everywhere. So, how much do elevators actually cost?
Let's start with the estimate portion, right? Because everyone loves to know that one. So if you're looking at a single passenger elevator with a mid-rise building, you're looking anywhere between $500,000 to $700,000 for that elevator to be installed.
That does not include what comes after. Inspection fees, DOB fees, and all kinds of other fees. But most importantly, maintenance. You could go for what is called an oil and grease contract, where they only do the bare minimum to make sure your elevator is running. That will run you about $200 a month. Or you could go for the full coverage, where they cover inspections, repair work, and more. But this investment only makes sense if you know it will last. What's the lifespan of an elevator?
Oh, that is a great question. So 40 years ago, I would tell you that elevator components could last 30 years. Now, we're saying about 15 years.
Why?
Think about a computer these days. Your laptop only lasts 5 to 7 years if you're lucky, right? Sometimes you'll maybe get 3 years out of a laptop. Think of an elevator controller like a computer. You know, it's all electrical components, it's all motherboards, circuits, fuses. That only lasts for so long.
That seems like a big investment for not a lot of time, right? So what do you do?
Now, if you do elect for the full coverage and you have the elevator contractor really performing the work necessary to keep that equipment running and in good shape, you can increase the lifespan to another 10 to 12 years at that point.
After 15 years, you will have spent around $360,000 in maintenance. But you will still have an elevator with 10 years to go, instead of having to shell out for a new one. What about escalators? How much do they cost?
A lot more than elevators.
Really?
The key with escalators that a lot of people, managers and owners don't realize is the logistics of putting a new escalator in. An elevator nowadays can be broken apart and then reassembled back once on site. An escalator, the truss, the actual body of the escalator itself, is always in one piece. So when you are installing it, you have to crane it in. You have to put it on a flatbed truck and move it to the job site. It's all one foundation. There's so many factors that go into getting it into position. According to Matthew, the average mall escalator would be in the ballpark of $1 million, and maintenance would be even higher than elevators. And now we get to the real moneymaker: maintenance. I started to look into their annual reports and put it together. Look at Otis, for example. Say these are their net sales in 2025. If you separate them by division, you start to see what their main business really is. Servicing makes almost twice as much. But when you take out the cost and only look at the operating profit, you start to see the real extent of the service division. New equipment only has an operating margin of 4.8%. Servicing is about 25%, making the servicing the real moneymaker. So how do you get your hands on these juicy profitable contracts? I'll talk about one of the metrics that we like to look at, right? When we advise our clients is looking at the mechanic's routes. Basically, as a mechanic, I have a route and a number of units under my care. But if I have something like 1,200 units under me, I only have time for emergency calls. That's it. Whereas a smaller company with maybe less clients can have an average of 100 or 200 units per mechanic, and they can really take their time to do preventive care. So that's where you're going to see a difference between the bigger guys all the way down to the smaller guys. How often is it the case that the manufacturer is the ideal choice for that maintenance contract?
There's 1.5 million variables that go into that. OEMs, some of the bigger guys, they do provide a lot of value, a lot of resources up front to some of these bigger buildings. And they have a big brain trust behind them of lead engineers in the industry, mechanics that are trained to the highest levels you can. Those guys are what really brings the value to them, knowing that your equipment is being looked at to some of the brightest in the vertical transportation industry.
Whether it's a manufacturer or an independent company, our way of life relies on the maintenance of these machines, shouldered by a workforce of technicians that keep our world running.
Letting us keep going, up and down. If you're looking for a new untapped business idea, check out our database of unsexy niches. And if you want more of these business breakdowns, hit subscribe. We got a lot more coming. See you in the next video.